All right, so get ready because today's deep dive is going to be intense. You guys sent in Gary Keller's The One Thing, and honestly, I'm both excited and terrified.
Yeah.
It's all about laser focus and achieving extraordinary results, and we've got excerpts here covering stories, research, even what Keller calls the lies of success.
Oh, yeah.
I'm already kind of sweating thinking about confronting my to-do list, so maybe you can help. Where do we even begin with this thing?
You know, it's fascinating because Keller doesn't just give us tips. He actually dismantles these common beliefs we have about success, like everything matters equally. He uses examples from history and modern times, Andrew Carnegie to Steve Jobs, showing how this one thing thinking can lead to huge breakthroughs.
Okay, I'm all about busting myths. But that first one, everything matters equally, ouch. That's like my entire life summed up.
Yeah.
How do we not fall into that trap?
Right. It feels impossible to escape. But Keller lays down this principle, the 80-20 principle, or the Pareto Principle as it's known. It basically says 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts.
Okay, but how?
And he brings up Joseph Juran, who applied this to everything. He found that just a handful of defects in factories were causing most of the problems, and then he realized the same was true in management. A few key decisions drove most of the results. Imagine the impact of focusing on just those.
Okay, so maybe everything isn't equally important. That actually makes me feel a little better, less pressure. But how do we even figure out what that 20% IS, like what to focus on?
Well, he gives some great examples. One that really resonated with me was about Keller learning guitar. He only had like 20 minutes a day to practice, so he goes to Eric Johnson, this legendary guitarist, and asks for advice. And guess what? Focusing on just one scale unlocked a whole world of playing for him.
Seriously. So even with limited time, if you have the right focus, it can make all the difference. Man, that makes me think about all the things I dabble in but never truly master. What if I applied that laser focus to just one?
That's precisely the question Keller wants us to ask. It's not about doing a less, it's about doing the right things. Less is more, as they say.
Less is more. Okay, I like that. Now, what about multitasking? Am I allowed to keep doing that? Because I'm pretty sure I am the queen of multitasking.
The queen, I love it. Well, multitasking is another myth that Keller tackles. He highlights research showing that it can actually reduce your effectiveness and just increase your stress.
Really? But how?
Think about it. The average worker is interrupted every 11 minutes. And then they spend almost a third of their day just recovering from those interruptions. It's not efficient at all. It's just chaos.
Whoa. Okay. That explains my brain fog. I always thought flitting between tasks made me super productive. Maybe it's the opposite. So is Keller saying to just stop multitasking completely?
Not necessarily stop, but definitely be more strategic. Each time you switch tasks, your brain has to reorient itself, and those little shifts add up. Chronic multitaskers are more prone to making mistakes. They tend to favor new information over old, which leads to bad decisions. And then there's the stress. We all know that feeling, right?
That's like my daily life. So less is more, even if it feels wrong. What's the next myth we're going to bust?
Well, how about the idea that success requires a life of constant discipline?
Oh, man, I am so bad at it. I could do the discipline thing for like a day, maybe two, but then I'm right back to my old ways.
It's a common struggle, but Keller argues that it's not about being some sort of superhuman with endless self-control. It's about building the right habits.
Habits?
Habits. He uses the example of Michael Phelps. Believe it or not, Phelps couldn't focus as a kid, but with years of disciplined training, he became an Olympic champion. It's about channeling discipline into those habits that make success automatic, not a constant uphill battle.
So it's like investing the effort up front to create systems that work for you instead of relying on willpower alone.
Exactly. And research backs this up. Studies show it takes, on average, 66 days to form a new habit. This isn't about perfection, it's about consistency.
Consistency, got it. So what about willpower then? Is that a myth too?
Well, it kind of is. The myth is that willpower is limitless and always available.
Tell me about it. I swear some days I run out of willpower by like 10 a.m. What am I supposed to do? Train my willpower like a muscle?
He actually does use that analogy. It's about understanding that willpower is a limited resource. Like your phone's battery. It gets drained. And he uses this example, the marshmallow experiment. Remember that one? Where they put a marshmallow in front of a kid and tell them if they wait, they get 2?
Oh, yeah. That was brutal. Those poor kids.
It perfectly illustrates how we're wired for instant gratification. And every decision you make, every temptation you resist it, all drains that willpower battery. No wonder we're exhausted by the end of the day.
So I should schedule all the hard stuff for like 7 a.m. before my willpower runs out. Is that what he's saying?
Not a bad strategy. Keller does suggest front-loading your day with those high willpower tasks.
Really?
You know, strike while the iron's hot.
Got it. Front load and then what?
Well, now we get to a lie that might be a bit controversial. The myth of work-life balance.
Wait, hold on. Isn't work-life balance like the holy grail? Are we just giving up on that?
Keller's not saying give up, but he's challenging this idea of perfect balance. He believes it's more about counterbalancing, making conscious choices about where to focus your energy at any given time.
So it's like acknowledging that sometimes work needs to take priority and other times family does. And it's okay to shift that balance intentionally.
Exactly. He even tells the story about a woman who put off her passion for dressmaking to focus on her career and family. But later in life, she regretted not making time for it. It's a reminder to be mindful of our choices, even if they create temporary imbalance.
Okay, so balance is a myth. But what about big goals? Are those a myth too?
Well, the myth is that big is bad.
I get that. I love a good ambitious goal,
Yeah.
but sometimes they do intimidate me. Is this like fear of success or something?
It can be. But Keller encourages us to embrace big thinking. Don't shrink from it.
Yeah.
He uses examples like Steve Jobs' radical product reduction at Apple. They went all in on just a few key products. And then there's Sabir Bhatia, who came to America with just $250 and built Hotmail into a multi-million-dollar company. Big goals, bold action. That's the message.
So ditch the fear and dream. Big. Okay, I like it. But how do we actually turn those dreams into reality without getting totally overwhelmed? What's Keller's secret weapon?
He introduces this tool he calls the focusing question. And it's deceptively simple. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary?
Hold on. So this one question can apply to anything. I'm skeptical, but also kind of hooked.
Right. It does seem too simple to be true. But when you start applying it, it can completely change how you approach your goals. It's like it forces you to prioritize, to think strategically. Like imagine you're Andrew Carnegie putting all your eggs in one basket. That's the kind of focus Keller's talking about.
Well, okay, that's intense. So it's like finding that one domino that'll set off a chain reaction of success. I get it, but how do I even start to answer that question? It feels kind of huge.
He breaks it down in a really cool way. He uses this concept called goal setting to the now, where you start with your big someday goal, that dream you have for your life, and then you'll work backward. What needs to happen in 5 years to get there? This year, this month, today. Each answer leads you closer to that one thing that matters most right now.
Okay, so it's about connecting the dots between where I want to be eventually and what I'm doing today. That makes it feel a lot less overwhelming and a lot more actionable. I like that.
Exactly. And then to actually make it a habit, Keller encourages us to ask the focusing question every single day. He calls it the success habit. Write down that one thing. He even suggests finding an accountability partner, someone to help you stay focused and celebrate wins with.
So no more just winging it. It's about intentional action aligned with my big goals.
Got it. So the focusing question is like the foundation, but there's more to the framework, right?
Absolutely. We've busted those myths, but to achieve extraordinary results, Keller says we got to address 3 key areas: purpose, priority, and productivity. Okay, so we're moving from the philosophical to the practical. I'm ready to get my hands dirty.
Awesome. Well, it all starts with purpose. Understanding your WHY. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's driving you? And believe it or not, Keller uses the story of Ebenezer Scrooge to illustrate this.
Wait, Scrooge, the guy who hates Christmas and loves money? How is HE an example of purpose?
Well, think about it. At first, Scrooge's purpose, IS, all about money. Right? He's greedy, selfish, but then he's forced to confront the consequences of his actions through those 3 ghosts. He realizes his purpose is all wrong, and it totally transforms him. He becomes generous, kind. He focuses on using his wealth to help others.
So it's a classic redemption story.
Yeah.
But it's also about realizing that your actions need to be aligned with your WHY. If your purpose is off, everything else will be off too.
Exactly. Once you know your WHY, then you can prioritize effectively. And that's where goal setting to the now comes in again. It's about aligning your daily actions with those big, audacious goals we talked about.
Okay, it's all starting to come together now. But how do I choose when everything feels important? How do I prioritize when my to-do list is a mile long?
That's the beauty of the focusing question. When you ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? You're automatically pushing those less important tasks aside. You're zeroing in on the actions that will have the biggest impact on your goals.
So it's like a mental decluttering exercise, only keeping the things that actually matter. I love it. But what about when I have multiple priorities that all seem equally important? How do I choose just one?
That's where goal setting to the now comes in again. You got to connect your long-term vision with your immediate actions. So let's say you have two big projects at work, both with crazy deadlines. Ask yourself which one will have a bigger impact on your overall career goals. Which one will open more doors down the line?
So it's about taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. Let my long-term vision guide my short-term decisions. Not just reacting, but strategically moving towards my goals.
I like that. Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of writing things down. When you actually write down your one thing, it becomes real. It's a commitment. And research shows people who write down their goals are way more likely to achieve them. It's like sending a message to your brain. This is important. This is what I'm focusing on.
I'm a very visual person, so
Right.
that makes total sense. And having that reminder can definitely help keep me on track when distractions pop up, which they always do. So
Yeah.
we've got purpose, we've got priority now. Let's talk about the actual doing part, the productivity.
Yeah.
How do we actually get stuff done?
Keller is a huge proponent of time blocking, scheduling dedicated time for your one thing. No distractions, no multitasking, just pure focused effort on that one task.
Okay, time blocking, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
But how much time are we talking about here? Like, surely we don't have to spend all day, every day on just one thing.
Well, he suggests blocking off at least 4 hours a day.
4 hours. Wow. I know we need to focus, but is that really realistic for everyone? Most of us have jobs, families, lives outside of work.
He acknowledges that. But he argues that if you're serious about achieving extraordinary results, you got to treat your one thing like it's the most important meeting of the day. Think about Stephen King. He blocks off his entire mornings for writing. No emails, no calls, just writing. And look at what he's accomplished.
Okay, well, if Stephen King can do it, maybe I can find 4 hours somewhere in my schedule. But to be honest, the thought of working on just one task for that long without getting distracted, it makes me a little anxious.
I'm a master multitasker, remember?
Of course. And he gets that. Most of us aren't wired for that kind of sustained focus. So he suggests leveraging your natural energy cycles. He talks about being a maker in the morning when you're fresh and your willpower is high. That's when you tackle your one thing.
Okay, so front load the day with the important stuff.
Yeah.
Got it. What about those afternoon slumps, though? I'm basically useless after lunch.
That's when you switch to manager mode. The afternoon is for those administrative tasks, emails, meetings, things that don't require as much creative energy. Oh, I like that. It's not about working nonstop. It's about being smart with your time and energy and giving myself permission to ease up a bit in the afternoon, knowing that I've already tackled the most important thing. What about other productivity tips? Any other tricks up Keller's sleeve?
Oh, he's got tons. One of my favorites is the Seinfeld strategy. Have you heard of that one?
Vaguely ring a bell. Remind me.
It's super simple. You get a big calendar, and every day that you work on your one thing, you mark a big X on that day. The goal is to build a chain of X's, and the longer that chain gets, the harder it is to break.
Oh, yeah. I've seen people do that for exercise or writing. It's a great visual reminder of your progress. Kind of gamifies the process, too. I like that.
Exactly. And it's surprisingly motivating. It taps into that desire we all have for consistency and progress. And then there's the whole environment piece. Keller talks about how important it is to create a workspace that actually supports focus. Minimize distractions, set boundaries, make it a place where you can actually get stuff done.
So it's not just about willpower. It's about setting yourself up for success by controlling your environment. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But what about those times when life gets crazy and everything feels like a priority? How do we avoid getting totally overwhelmed and stay focused on that one thing?
Well, that's where Keller introduces this really interesting concept. He calls them the 4 thieves of productivity. These are like the sneaky culprits that can totally sabotage our progress, even when we have the best of intentions.
Oh boy, this sounds ominous. So who are these productivity thieves? And more importantly, how do we stop them from stealing our precious time and energy?
All right, let's unmask these thieves one by one. The first one is the inability to say no.
Ugh, tell me about it. I am the worst at saying no, always overcommitting myself. How do I break free from that people-pleasing trap?
It's tough, but Keller emphasizes boundaries. Being protective of your time and energy. He uses Steve Jobs as an example. Jobs was famously selective about his commitments. If it didn't align with his vision for Apple, it was a hard no.
So it's about knowing your priorities and having the guts to decline anything that doesn't fit. Easier said than done, but I see the value. What about thief number 2? What's that one?
Fear of chaos. It's kind of ironic, but when we hyper-focus on our one thing, it can create little chaos in other areas of our lives. And we have to be okay with that.
Wait, so you're saying a little mess is a good thing. I'm all about balance and order.
Balance is great, don't get me wrong. But sometimes you need to embrace a little imbalance to reach those big goals. Keller's point is that if you're too afraid of a little chaos, you'll never achieve those big dreams. It's like if you're truly dedicating serious time to your one thing, something else might have to slide for a bit. It's a trade-off, you know?
Okay, so being comfortable with a little discomfort, knowing it's for the greater good. Got it. What's the third thief on this list?
This one's a little less abstract. Poor health habits. It's easy to let things like sleep, nutrition, and exercise slip when we're super focused on a goal, but Keller reminds us that those things are foundational to productivity.
Oh man, that is so true. It's like trying to run a car without gas. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And the fourth thief is having an unsupportive environment. And this includes both your physical space and the people around you.
So it's about creating a workspace that promotes focus and being mindful of who you spend your time with, surrounding yourself with people who understand your goals and support your journey.
You got it. Minimize those distractions, set those boundaries, and find your tribe. It all adds up to creating an environment where you can thrive.
Wow, this has been an amazing deep dive into the one thing. We've busted those myths about success, we explored the power of the focusing question, and we even took down those pesky productivity thieves.
Yeah, I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for achieving my goals.
It's about simplifying your life and focusing your energy where it matters most. It's about going from feeling overwhelmed to feeling empowered.
Absolutely. But before we wrap things up, I have one more question. Does Keller actually back all this up with research? I mean, it's all well and good to talk about these concepts, but is there evidence to support them? He does. He actually dedicates a whole section of the book to the science behind his ideas, citing studies from all sorts of fields, psychology, neuroscience, behavioral economics, you name it.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this isn't just some feel-good self-help stuff. It's actually grounded in research. That's reassuring.
Exactly. For example, he talks about K. Anders Ericsson's work. He was the guy who studied elite performers and came up with that famous 10,000-hour rule. Keller connects this to the importance of focusing on your one thing and really dedicating the time to master that skill.
So it's not just about working hard. It's about working smart and putting in the hours where they truly count.
Exactly. And he also talks about Carol Dweck's research on mindsets, growth versus fixed. He really emphasizes the importance of having that growth mindset where you believe your abilities can be developed through effort and dedication.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about embracing challenges as opportunities for growth and viewing setbacks as valuable learning experiences.
Absolutely. It's about believing in your ability to learn and grow, no matter what.
Well, this deep dive has been truly eye-opening. It's not just about productivity. It's about living a more intentional and impactful life. It's about finding your purpose and making your mark on the world. And if you're feeling inspired to simplify your life, focus on your priorities, and achieve your biggest goals, I highly recommend checking out The One Thing by Gary Keller. It's full of practical advice, inspiring stories, and research-backed insights that can truly make a difference.
And if you want to go even deeper, be sure to visit Keller's website, the1tthing.com. It's got tons of resources, articles, and even a free assessment that can help you pinpoint your one thing.
Awesome. Well, that's it for this week's Deep Dive. We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep asking those big questions. Stay focused on your one thing. And as always, go make your mark on the world.